supplement sitting on your kitchen counter right now, the one your doctor told you to take for your bones, may be the single biggest reason your blood pressure keeps creeping up, no matter what you eat or how much you walk. A 2022 analysis published in the American Journal of Cardiology followed over 2,700 adults between the ages of 60 and 80 and found that those taking high-dose calcium supplements had a 32% higher rate of arterial stiffening compared to those who got their calcium from food alone. 32%. And most of those patients were taking the supplement on the advice of a physician who never revisited that recommendation. This is not about stopping calcium forever. This is about 6 specific things that happen in your body when you supplement calcium the way most Americans over 60 do it, and why that approach quietly works against your cardiovascular system while appearing to help your skeleton. By the end of this video, I'm going to give you a 3-minute protocol that fixes all of it. But first, you need to understand what's actually happening inside your arteries right now, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Dr. Renata Osei spent years puzzled by the same pattern. Patients would come in with blood pressure that refused to respond to the usual interventions, dietary changes, moderate exercise, even medication adjustments. They were doing everything right. And then she started looking at their supplement lists. Nearly every single one of them was taking 1,200 milligrams of calcium carbonate daily, sometimes more. Dr. Osei is an integrative cardiologist based in Nashville with 17 years of clinical practice. She's been published in peer-reviewed cardiovascular literature and has worked with well over 3,000 patients managing hypertension. She doesn't speak up about this lightly, but after watching the same avoidable pattern damage the same age group for nearly 2 decades, she said enough is enough. Before we go further, I want to ask you something specific. When you take your calcium supplement, do you take it alone, with food, or alongside other vitamins? Drop your answer in the comments, because the timing and combination matter more than almost anything else in this video. Here is what most people are never told. Calcium is one of the most tightly regulated minerals in the human body. Your blood maintains calcium levels within an extremely narrow range, and your body will pull it from wherever it needs to in order to keep that range stable. The assumption behind supplementation is that flooding the system with more calcium means more of it ends up in your bones, but that is not how it works. When you swallow a high-dose calcium supplement, particularly calcium carbonate, the most common form, a significant portion of that mineral enters your bloodstream all at once. This creates a temporary state called hypercalcemia, which triggers the vascular smooth muscle, the tiny muscles that line your artery walls, to contract. That contraction raises peripheral vascular resistance, which raises blood pressure. This mechanism is called vascular calcification, and it is well documented in neurology and cardiology literature. The term sounds abstract. Until you understand, it means calcium is literally depositing in the flexible tissue of your arteries and making them rigid. After age 60, this process accelerates for a specific reason. Aging kidneys clear excess calcium from the bloodstream more slowly, meaning that post-supplementation spike lasts longer. Simultaneously, declining estrogen and testosterone levels reduce the bone-directing proteins that would otherwise send calcium to the skeleton instead of soft tissue. Mainstream medicine has understood this mechanism in research settings for over a decade. What has failed is the translation of that knowledge to the patients sitting in waiting rooms. Calcium tablets already in their pockets. Here are 6 things your doctor never told you about calcium and blood pressure. We're counting down from 6 to 1. The lower the number, the more urgent the action. By the time we reach number 1, you'll have everything you need. Number 6. The dose your doctor recommended was designed for a younger body. The 1,000 to 1,200 milligram daily recommendation for calcium supplementation was largely established based on studies conducted in adults under 55. It surprised a lot of cardiologists when that same recommendation was extended to people in their 60s and 70s without modification, because the aging cardiovascular system absorbs and processes high mineral loads very differently. A paper published in the British Medical Journal found that calcium supplement use above 500 milligrams per day was associated with a statistically significant increase in cardiovascular events in postmenopausal women, a finding so striking that the editorial board called for an immediate reappraisal of blanket calcium recommendations. The biological mechanism is vascular calcification. Excess free calcium in the bloodstream binds to arterial wall proteins, reducing elasticity. Check your supplement label today. If your daily calcium total from all supplements is above 500 milligrams, talk to your doctor about reducing to a split dose of 250 milligrams twice daily, rather than one large dose. Number 5. Calcium carbonate is the worst form for people over 60. Most people don't realize there are multiple forms of calcium, and the cheapest, most common form, calcium carbonate, requires a highly acidic stomach environment to be absorbed. After 60, stomach acid production declines by as much as 40% in many adults, a condition called hypochlorhydria. That means much of your calcium carbonate tablet isn't being absorbed into bone at all. It's circulating in your bloodstream unattended. Calcium citrate, by contrast, absorbs without the need for stomach acid, produces a slower and more sustained release into the bloodstream, and has a substantially lower association with arterial calcification in aging populations. A study in the Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that adults over 65 absorbed calcium citrate 27% more efficiently than calcium carbonate under the same fasting conditions. Eleanor Vasquez, a 68-year-old retired school librarian from Tucson, Arizona, had been meticulous about her health for decades. She took her calcium carbonate tablet every morning, watched her sodium, walked 30 minutes a day. Her blood pressure still sat at 148/92 at her annual physical, year after year. Her cardiologist added a second medication. It barely moved the needle. When Dr. Osei reviewed her supplement list, she immediately flagged the calcium carbonate. Eleanor was also taking a proton pump inhibitor for reflux, which was actively suppressing the very stomach acid she needed to absorb calcium carbonate. She switched to calcium citrate at half the dose. Within 6 weeks, her morning systolic reading dropped to 131. I had no idea a tablet I'd been taking for 15 years was essentially unprocessed calcium sitting in my arteries. Nobody ever told me there was a different kind. Ask your pharmacist to switch you to calcium citrate. It typically costs the same or less than carbonate. And for anyone over 60 or taking acid-reducing medication, it is the substantially safer cardiovascular choice. Number 4. Taking calcium alone is like sending money with no address. Calcium needs a delivery mechanism to reach bone tissue instead of artery walls. That mechanism is vitamin K2. Specifically the MK7 form. K2 activates a protein called osteocalcin, which physically binds calcium and escorts it into the bone matrix. Without K2, calcium absorbed from supplementation has no directional signal, and it follows the path of least resistance, which in an aging body often means soft tissue and vascular walls. Randomized controlled trial published in Nutrients found that postmenopausal women who supplemented calcium alongside vitamin K2 MK7 showed a measurable reduction in arterial stiffness over a 3-year period, while those taking calcium alone showed a measurable increase. The biological term for what K2 does is carboxylation. It chemically activates the bone-binding proteins that would otherwise remain dormant. Add a K2 MK7 supplement of 90 to 180 micrograms daily, taken at the same time as your calcium. This is a single additional capsule, available over the counter, typically under $12 a bottle. Before I get to number 3, I need to flag something that stops almost every person in this situation cold, because what I'm about to describe is happening to millions of people who are following their doctor's advice perfectly and still wondering why their blood pressure won't cooperate. Number 3. Magnesium deficiency turns calcium supplementation toxic for your arteries. Calcium and magnesium work as biological counterweights. Calcium contracts muscle fibers, including the smooth muscle and artery walls. Magnesium relaxes them. When these two minerals are in balance, your arteries expand and contract fluidly with each heartbeat. When calcium supplementation raises blood calcium levels without a corresponding magnesium intake, the balance tips entirely toward contraction. Chronically contracted artery walls mean chronically elevated blood pressure. Here is the number that should concern you. A study published in Nutrients estimated that approximately 48% of Americans do not consume adequate magnesium, and that rate climbs in adults over 60 because magnesium absorption from food decreases with age. If you are in that group and taking a daily calcium supplement, you are actively worsening the imbalance with every tablet. Gerald Hutchins was a 72-year-old retired civil engineer from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Analytical, skeptical, the kind of man who needed data before changing anything. He had taken 1,200 milligrams of calcium daily for 9 years on his orthopedist's advice after a mild vertebral fracture. His blood pressure had been climbing steadily, 138, then 144, then 151. He attributed it to aging. Dr. Osei ran a red blood cell magnesium test, not the standard serum test, which Gerald's previous doctors had used and declared normal. His intracellular magnesium was significantly depleted. She introduced 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate daily and reduced his calcium to 500 milligrams. Gerald told her he'd try it for a month and report back with his findings. His findings 4 weeks later: systolic pressure down to 139 from 151. He scheduled a follow-up and brought a handwritten chart of his daily morning readings. I told my wife I felt like I'd been running an engine without oil for a decade, and someone finally topped it up. Ask your doctor for a red blood cell magnesium test, not the standard serum panel, which misses intracellular deficiency. In the meantime, magnesium glycinate at 300 to 400 milligrams daily is the most bioavailable and gentle form, unlikely to cause digestive upset. If this video is reaching people who need it, take 2 seconds and hit the like button. It's the only way this information gets in front of someone who's still taking calcium the wrong way and wondering why their numbers aren't moving. Number 2. The timing of your calcium supplement is making the spike worse. Taking a large calcium dose on an empty stomach first thing in the morning is one of the most common patterns Dr. Osei sees, and it produces the sharpest, most sustained blood calcium spike of any timing option. An empty stomach means rapid absorption, a rapid spike in blood calcium levels, a rapid vasoconstriction response, and elevated morning blood pressure readings that many patients then attribute to morning hypertension syndrome rather than their supplement. A study in the American Journal of Hypertension showed that the magnitude of post-supplementation blood pressure elevation was significantly lower when calcium was taken with a full meal, specifically a meal containing dietary fat, which slows calcium absorption and blunts the spike. Splitting the dose, 250 milligrams with lunch and 250 milligrams with dinner, produced the lowest and most gradual blood calcium curve in all tested groups. Move your calcium supplement to mealtimes. Split it across 2 meals rather than one large morning dose. This single change in Dr. Osei's clinical experience produces a measurable drop in morning systolic readings within 2 weeks for the majority of patients. Number 1. Vitamin D3 without K2 accelerates exactly the arterial damage you're trying to prevent. This is the one that surprises people most. Vitamin D3 dramatically increases calcium absorption from the gut. That is its primary function in this context. Most physicians recommend D3 alongside calcium for this exact reason. But if you are increasing calcium absorption without simultaneously activating the K2-directed pathways that send calcium to bone, you are simply absorbing more calcium into a system that doesn't know where to put it. A landmark paper in the journal Nutrients described what researchers called the calcium paradox. Population supplementing with D3 and calcium without K2 showed simultaneous increases in bone density markers and arterial calcification. More calcium reaching bone, yes, but more calcium reaching arteries too. The two effects are not mutually exclusive without K2 acting as traffic control. Marisol Fontaine was a 66-year-old textile artist from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Warm, intuitive, and deeply skeptical of conventional medicine after years of feeling like her concerns were dismissed. Her cardiologist had recommended both D3 at 5,000 IU and calcium carbonate, a high D3 dose that was absorbing every milligram of calcium she consumed into her bloodstream as efficiently as possible, with no K2 to redirect it. Her blood pressure was 158/96. She told Dr. Osei she felt like her chest was always slightly held. When the full calcium K2 magnesium protocol was introduced and her D3 dose was reduced to 2,000 IU, Marisol's pressure began dropping within 10 days. By week 5, it was 141/84. It feels like my chest finally exhaled. I don't know how else to say it. Something stopped being tight. If you are taking D3 above 2,000 IU daily, alongside calcium supplementation, add K2 MK7. This is non-negotiable. The two work as a functional pair. D3 increases absorption. K2 directs placement. Running D3 without K2 in the presence of calcium supplementation after age 60 is the cardiovascular equivalent of flooding a room with water and never opening a drain. Here is the complete protocol. 4 steps. Everything in one place. Step 1. Reduce your calcium dose to 500 milligrams daily and switch to calcium citrate. Take 250 milligrams with lunch and 250 milligrams with dinner. Not on an empty stomach, ever. Calcium citrate absorbs without requiring stomach acid and produces a slower, safer blood calcium curve. Step 2. Add vitamin K2 MK7 at 100 micrograms daily, taken with your largest calcium dose. K2 activates the proteins that direct calcium into bone instead of artery walls. Without it, every milligram of calcium you absorb is working without a destination. Step 3. Add magnesium glycinate at 300 to 400 milligrams, taken in the evening. Magnesium is the physiological counterweight to calcium's vascular contraction effect. Evening timing takes advantage of magnesium's gentle relaxation effect during sleep, when blood pressure should be naturally lower. Step 4. Reduce your D3 to 2,000 IU, unless you have a documented clinical deficiency requiring higher dosing. Above 2,000 IU, D3 significantly amplifies calcium absorption, which intensifies every effect we've discussed, good and bad. Here is what to expect. In 3 days, many people notice their morning chest tightness is noticeably reduced. Blood pressure readings may begin reflecting the drop in vascular resistance, particularly the systolic number. After 1 week, morning systolic readings typically begin showing a consistent downward trend. Sleep quality often improves as magnesium levels start restoring. After 1 month, patients following this protocol consistently report that their blood pressure medication, if applicable, starts working more effectively, because the protocol removes the physiological resistance that was working against it. One mistake to avoid: do not take your magnesium and calcium at the same time. These two minerals compete for the same absorption channels in the small intestine. Take calcium with meals. Magnesium in the evening at minimum 3 hours apart. This is the most common failure point. People do everything else right and then combine the two minerals and wonder why nothing is improving. Separate them. Always. The last story is about a man named Douglas Pack, a 74-year-old retired structural engineer from Portland, Oregon. Douglas was, by his own admission, a difficult patient. He had read medical textbooks in his spare time for decades. He questioned every recommendation. He told Dr. Osei in their first appointment that he doubted any over-the-counter supplement change was going to do what 2 blood pressure medications hadn't. He followed the protocol anyway, reluctantly, precisely, and with a spreadsheet. He tracked his morning blood pressure every day for 40 days. At day 7, he sent Dr. Osei an email with one sentence: "The trend is real." By day 40, his systolic average had dropped from 162 to 144. He returned to his cardiologist, who reduced one of his medications for the first time in 6 years. I spent 30 years designing load-bearing systems. The idea that I was loading a mineral into my arteries without the structural support to carry it, that's embarrassing to admit. But here we are. That was not luck. That was Douglas finally giving his arterial walls what they had been asking for all along. Not less calcium, but calcium that had somewhere to go. Here is your 30-day challenge. Starting tomorrow morning, switch to calcium citrate, split the dose, add K2-MK7, separate your magnesium to the evening, and bring your D3 down to 2000 IU. Track your morning blood pressure every single day. 30 days. That is all it takes to know whether this is your answer. If you know someone over 60 who takes a calcium supplement and still can't get their blood pressure under control, please send them this video. That is the specific person this was made for. Someone who is doing everything they've been told and still watching that number climb. If you found this useful, subscribe. Dr. Osei covers one overlooked cardiovascular topic per week, and the next one is something almost no one over 65 is being warned about regarding their morning medication timing. Your arteries don't lose their ability to recover after 60. What they lose is patience for being given the wrong inputs. Give them the right ones and they will tell you exactly how they feel about it.